Story about a little television series that wasn't expected to survive very long, and the singular individual who by sheer bloody-mindedness kept it breathing. Without Bruno Gerussi, there wouldn't have been the Beachcombers. He was the heart, its conscience, and during the off-season, its champion. And whether you liked the man or thought he was a gigantic pain in the butt, he was the reason the show lasted as long as it did. Our leading player in this little saga is no longer with us, and that is undoubtedly sad. He left the stage long before we were ready to say goodbye. And many of the supporting players also left untimely exits and didn't get the curtain call they deserved. Or maybe that's just how it looks to the rest of us standing around, waiting for one more twist, one more punchline. There is something unsatisfying about a hit show that leaves town in the middle of the night. You know, the stories in the Beachcombers dealt with conflict, danger, politics, Hollywood stars, international gun smuggling, death, biker gangs, high-speed police shootouts. And that's when the cameras were rolling. Behind that sweet little series, there's some wonderful, wonderful stories that we tell in the book. And the neat thing was that I didn't even know most of them. I was there for some of these things and didn't realize they were happening. When Hollywood came calling back in the 60s, an agent asked Bruno over the phone how tall he was. 5'6", he said. Oh, geez, said the agent. Couldn't we fudge it a bit and say you're 5'8"? Hell, said Bruno, I'm lying when I said 5'6". Again, talk about my involvement. It's luck. I left high school. I grew up in a little town, like I said, in central Alberta called Wetaskiwin, and I left actually high school early to do professional theatre. So the first professional show I saw, I was in, and I was with an actor called Sid Brown, and Sid actually went and did a Beachcombers. He said to them, you know, there's got this young kid out in Alberta. I think he's moving to Vancouver. You should see about him in the show. So, a matter of a couple of years later, I was in for the audition. Now, I went for the audition with Phil Keatley. I don't know whether you were there. I don't know if you were there that day. You may have been. Phil Keatley and Ely Savoy. And you know, they had a couple of questions for me. They first said, "Can you grow a mustache?" And I said, yeah, of course, you have to realize that actors will say yes no matter what you ask them. Can you ride a horse? Yes, sure, I can get on both sides. Brain surgery? Yes, I'm a good brain surgeon, I can actually do surgery. Actors will, of course. You know, I think I had to go home that night and start growing a beard. And then they kind of looked at me, which, very funny, because it was like they were sizing me up. And a couple of seconds later, rather appropriately, they said, what size are you? And I said, I'm 42 tall. And they kind of smiled, looked at each other, and said, you got the part. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, it's, you know, that expression, you know, you fit the part, but in this particular case, it was actually fitting the part. RCMP uniforms, I played the policeman on the show, were very expensive. And at that time, you actually had to go to the RCMP to get permission to make a uniform. So they happened to have a 42 tall in costumes. And so basically, that was it. Now, I did notice, though, that the sleeves were a little short, but I didn't want to lose the part. So for the first 2 years, if you ever see me acting, I never stretch my arms out. I'm doing that Tyrannosaurus Rex kind of acting. If I did that, I would lose the part. So that's basically how I started got into the series. Bruno, like I said earlier, was a Canadian star, which at that time was a bit of an oxymoron. The people who met and worked with him either loved him or thought he was an arrogant boor. There was no in-between with Bruno. So obviously I was a little nervous the first day on set. I'd heard stories about him. I didn't have any scenes with him, but I was in makeup. And Bruno was a kind of a throwback from his days in the theater. Actually used to put on his own makeup. And he came in and that was Bruno saying hello with me. So I'm sitting there rather quiet. And we started chatting, and an interesting thing, because I had done Of Mice and Men, the stage show that Sid Brown had seen me in, and Bruno had done it here in Vancouver, the Long Cheney, so we had a little bit of a connection through the theater. We'd worked with some people who were familiar with both of us, so we started to warm up to each other. I wish I could remember what I said to Bruno that morning. Whatever it was, it seemed to make him laugh, and so much so it started him coughing. And then the coughing turned into a little bit of a fit. And halfway through, it was becoming a little too long. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to kill the star of the series the first day I worked on it. But he kind of righted himself, and I remember this part of it. I remember him kind of smiling, kind of more to himself than to me, and they just walked out of the dressing room. And And after that, we actually became the best of friends. And for the rest of our lives, we were great friends.